Ever been to a concert, with those crazy light shows? Or even just, like, toured a factory where everything's running like clockwork?
Oh, yeah,
Chances are, behind the scenes, it's a control panel making sure everything runs smoothly.
it's true.
And today, we're going to dive deep into what it takes to actually build those intricate systems as a control panel assembler.
Love it.
You've been curious about this career path, and luckily, we've got all the info from RoleCatcher to break it down.
That's a great place to start. Most people, they don't realize how much we rely on control panels every single day. I mean, think about it. Traffic lights, keeping our cities moving, those concert lights you mentioned.
Right.
They're like the unsung heroes of our entire infrastructure.
Okay, so for someone totally new to this, what exactly is a control panel? I'm picturing like a metal box with wires and maybe a few blinking lights, but there's got to be more to it, right?
You're on the right track. Picture that metal box, but instead of, old love letters, it's packed with wires, switches, circuit boards, all sorts of components that control electrical equipment. It's like the brain behind the scenes, taking instructions and making things happen.
Okay, so if the control panel is the brain, is the assembler kind of like the neurosurgeon? Because RoleCatcher describes it as piecing together the nervous system of electrical equipment, which sounds pretty intense.
That's a great way to put it. Control panel assemblers are the ones taking those individual components, the wires, switches, relays, even these things called programmable logic controllers or PLCs, and they're connecting them all according to these super detailed schematics. It's not just screwing things in. They need to really understand how electricity flows and how each component interacts.
So it's like they're building a puzzle, but instead of a picture, they're creating this whole functioning system. Where would someone even do that? Is it all factories and warehouses?
You'll definitely find them in manufacturing plants, assembling panels for production lines and all those big machines.
Yeah.
But think broader. Construction sites for those really complex building systems, electrical supply companies customizing panels for clients.
Oh,
It's
interesting.
a really diverse field.
Yeah. RoleCatcher mentioned that assemblers need to stay updated on new technologies, too. It's not just connecting wires the same way forever. Oh.
Exactly. Think about all the changes: automation, robotics, even just smart buildings.
Yeah, it's changing fast.
As technology changes, so do those control panels that make it all work. So a good control panel assembler, they're a lifelong learner, always curious about the latest advancements, figuring out how to integrate them.
Wow. I didn't realize it was so important to stay updated.
Yeah.
So it's not just about being good with your hands, but also keeping those tech skills sharp.
That actually makes me think about the work environment itself. What's it like to be a control panel assembler? Like, day to day, what are you doing?
Well, it's definitely hands-on. Remember those safety goggles you mentioned earlier?
Right. Those are essential, along with other protective gear. You're often working with tools, bending wires, making those precise connections.
Hmm.
It's a blend of technical skill and, I'd say, a bit of artistry.
Now you're speaking my language. I love that, combining practical skills with being creative.
Hmm.
But RoleCatcher also mentions, some potential downsides, like repetitive tasks and noisy environments. So it's all about finding that balance, right?
Precisely. The work can be incredibly rewarding, but you might be on your feet for long periods, dealing with tight deadlines, and yeah, it can get a little noisy in those industrial settings. It's important to weigh those factors against, your personality and preferences.
Speaking of finding the balance, RoleCatcher talks about different specializations within the field. Like, you could go the mechanical route or focus on computers and electronics. What kind of doors do those paths open?
See, that's where it gets really interesting. Imagine specializing in control panels for, say, robotics.
Okay, yeah.
You'd be right there on the cutting edge of automation, designing the systems that allow robots to do all these complex tasks.
Wow.
Or you could dive deep into the world of microelectronics, creating those control systems for tiny, powerful devices.
So it's not just a one-size-fits-all kind of career. You can really find a niche that matches your interests.
Exactly. And what's really cool is this convergence we're seeing between those mechanical and electronic controls. Someone who's got skills in both areas.
Yeah.
They're going to be super valuable, especially in fields like robotics and advanced manufacturing, where those lines are getting blurry.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
Now, let's say someone's just starting their control panel assembly career. What's that journey look like?
Yeah.
What does RoleCatcher say about career progression?
You typically start in an entry-level role. Maybe you're assisting more experienced assemblers, learning the ropes, getting really good at those wiring techniques. It's like your apprenticeship,
Okay.
but it definitely doesn't end there.
Right. Where could those skills take you down the line?
As you get more experience, you can move into roles with more responsibility, leading a team of assemblers, mentoring new folks coming in, making sure the quality stays high.
So you could go from building the systems to managing a whole team.
Exactly. Some people even transition into design using their hands-on knowledge to actually create the schematics for brand new control panels.
Oh, wow. So you move from building to designing. That's cool.
And don't forget about programming. The demand for PLC programming skills is huge, and it's only getting bigger. As automation gets more complex, those who can program the PLCs that control everything, they're going to be in high demand.
It's like a whole other level.
It really is. It could be a very lucrative path within the field.
Now, let's shift gears a bit and say you're prepping for a control panel assembler interview. RoleCatcher gives some sample questions, and one that stood out to me was, how do you ensure that control panels are assembled correctly? Seems like a simple question, but I'm betting there's a lot to it.
Oh, absolutely. That question is all about showing them how meticulous you are.
Right.
You'd want to talk about your approach being systematic, following the schematics to the letter, double-checking every single connection, understanding those industry standards.
Making sure everything's perfect.
Exactly. And this is where you can stand out by mentioning specific testing procedures. Like, you could talk about using a multimeter.
A what?
A multimeter, it's a tool for verifying voltage and things like that. Continuity, resistance. You prove you've got the technical knowledge to back up that precision.
They really want to know their control panel's in good hands, I guess.
For sure.
Another question RoleCatcher had was all about troubleshooting. Like, how would you approach a situation where a motor, controlled by your panel, isn't reaching full speed? That sounds like it takes some serious problem solving.
It does. It's almost like being an electrical detective.
Oh, I like that.
The interviewer wants to know you can think logically when things get tough.
Makes sense.
So you could talk about, like, checking the PLC program first, making sure there are no errors there,
Yeah.
or verifying those sensor readings, because they got to be accurate, or even getting in there and inspecting the motor wiring for any voltage drops.
Wow, so you really got to know your stuff.
Yeah, it's about making those connections between the theory and what's actually happening with the parts themselves.
Right.
A great answer might even include a time you figured out a tricky electrical issue, from your own experience.
Ooh, a good story always helps.
Yeah.
Okay, before we wrap up this control panel deep dive, we got to talk about RoleCatcher itself.
Okay.
You've been using it as our guide today, and it sounds like there are some pretty cool features like AI-powered CV analysis
Yeah.
and interview practice platforms.
Definitely.
What do you think about those tools?
I think they can be super helpful for anyone who's looking for a job. Like an AI can look at your CV and it can analyze it for, the right keywords, the formatting, things like that.
It's looking for what employers want to see.
Exactly. And that can really give you an advantage.
Yeah, definitely.
And the interview practice platforms.
Yeah, those are interesting.
They're like a game changer. You get to practice your answers, but in these scenarios that feel super real.
It's like you're in the hot seat, but you can do it from home.
Exactly.
I love it. Okay, so RoleCatcher aside, what's the biggest takeaway you want our listeners to remember about control panel assembly?
I think it really comes down to this. It's a career where you get to blend your technical skills with your creativity.
Oh, I like that.
You're not just dealing with wires and circuits. You're actually building the systems that, drive automation, light up our cities,
Right.
power those concert stages. It's big picture stuff.
It is.
And you're right there behind the scenes making it happen.
So if someone's listening and they really thrive in that hands-on environment, they love solving problems, and this whole intersection of technology and craftsmanship sounds exciting to them,
Yeah,
this could be the perfect fit.
it could be.
It's been a fascinating deep dive. I've learned a lot.
Me too.
Now, before you go out and build that control panel of your dreams, one last thought. If you were designing a control panel for a brand new invention, what would it be? A self-folding laundry machine.
Ooh,
A robot chef.
I like the way you think.
Let your imagination run wild and see where it takes you. Until next time, keep those circuits firing.